La historia de los asesinos en serie de Estados Unidos es, en sí misma, una novela de terror. Las manipulaciones carismáticas de Ted Bundy, la crueldad que se escondía tras la máscara de payaso de John Wayne Gacy. Todos ellos tenían un perfil, un tipo, preferencias en cuanto a víctimas y una firma pero. Hay algunos cuyas historias se alejan mucho de este perfil clásico, silenciosos, planificados, metódicos y, lo más importante, impredecibles y quizá, por eso son mucho más aterradores hoy. Hablaremos de la encarnación perfecta de esta definición, Israel Keys. Su historia era tan oscura y misteriosa que incluso dejó perplejo al FBI en Keys. Llevaba una doble vida perfecta. Durante el día, era un exitoso comerciante y un hábil carpintero que vivía en Alaska. Llevaba a su hija al parque y era conocido por sus vecinos como un padre de familia trabajador. Por las noches. Sin embargo, era un fantasma desconocido que sembró la muerte de un extremo al otro del país. No conocía a sus víctimas ni tenía conciencia en entonces. ¿Cómo es posible que este hombre corriente, que vivía en Alaska, fuera el autor de los asesinatos cometidos a miles de kilómetros de distancia, en Vermont, Nueva York o el estado de Washington? Y lo que es más importante, ¿cómo pudo hacerlo durante más de 10 años sin que nadie lo descubriera? La respuesta a estas preguntas se esconde en la infancia de Keys. En aquellos bosques oscuros y alejados de la civilización, Israel Keys nació el 7 de enero de 1978, en Utah. Pero para él nunca se materializó el clásico sueño infantil americano. Al principio, su familia pertenecía a la iglesia mormona. Sin embargo, al cabo de un tiempo abandonaron esta iglesia y adoptaron un estilo de vida cristiano, mucho más radical y fundamentalista. La familia se mudó a una zona boscosa del estado de Washington. Pero no se trataba de una casa rural cualquiera. Comenzaron a vivir en una cabaña sin electricidad ni agua, completamente aislados de la sociedad. No tenían televisión, ni radio, ni amigos. Apenas tenían contacto con el mundo exterior, empero este aislamiento físico era solo la punta del iceberg. Lo realmente aterrador era el aislamiento mental de la familia. Se unieron a una iglesia llamada The Ark, que defendía la supremacía blanca y tenía ideologías antisemitas y racistas. Israel fue inculcado con estas ideas llenas de odio desde niño. Fue prácticamente arrancado de la humanidad. Keys y sus hermanos tuvieron que conformarse con los conocimientos básicos que recibían en casa bajo el nombre de educación en el hogar, y nunca recibieron una educación formal. En ese mundo aislado, la oscuridad ya había comenzado a germinar. Israel comenzó a torturar animales cuando aún estaba en la escuela primaria. Esto era una señal temprana de lo que podría llegar a hacer en el futuro. Como vivían en el bosque, tenían que cazar para comer. Años más tarde, Keys se jactaría del placer que le producía despellejar a un ciervo vivo. Su tendencia a la violencia iba en aumento. A los 10 años, se colaba en las casas de sus vecinos para robarles las armas y, a veces, provocaba incendios solo por diversión. Según sus propias confesiones, ya a esa edad sabía que no era normal. A los 17 años, rechazó todas las estrictas reglas de su familia, declaró ser ateo y fue expulsado de casa. Encontraría la libertad que buscaba, pero no por un camino positivo, sino por uno mucho más oscuro. En 1998, a los 20 años, dio un paso sorprendente al alistarse en el ejército de los Estados Unidos. Si se hubiera investigado bien su pasado, quizá se habrían detectado muchas señales. Sirvió en Egipto, Texas y Washington. Sus comandantes y compañeros lo describían como un poco raro, pero inofensivo. Cuando se licenció del ejército en 2001, Keys era, a simple vista, un ciudadano estadounidense normal y corriente. Se mudó a Alaska, tuvo una hija fruto de una relación y montó su propia empresa de reformas llamada Keys Construction, que tuvo mucho éxito. Era una máscara perfecta. Sus vecinos lo veían como un padre de familia trabajador. Pero detrás de esa máscara El demonio ya se había despertado, a lo que diferenciaba a Israel Keys de todos los demás asesinos en serie de la historia. Era aún más espeluznante que los asesinatos que había cometido. Su método, para cometer sus asesinatos, escondía por todo el país equipos que él llamaba kits de asesino. Sí, has oído bien. Keys preparaba cubos o bolsas de plástico con años de antelación. En ellos guardaba armas, silenciadores, balas, dinero, cuerda, bolsas de plástico y lejía, entre otros materiales. Y enterraba estos kits en bosques o junto a edificios abandonados en diferentes estados del país en meses. Incluso años después, cuando le apetecía cometer un asesinato, ponía en marcha su plan. Por ejemplo, compraba un billete de avión desde su casa en Alaska a Chicago. No llevaba ningún arma consigo. Alquilaba un coche en el aeropuerto, conducía durante horas hasta una zona que había elegido previamente y desenterraba el cubo que había enterrado. Años atrás, ya estaba listo para cazar. Las víctimas, totalmente aleatorias. Cualquiera que le llamara la atención en parques, campings, carreteras desiertas o cafetería. No había ningún vínculo personal entre la víctima y el agresor. Este era el tipo de caso más difícil para el FBI. No había ningún patrón, ningún tipo de víctima, ni un patrón delictivo concentrado en un estado. Keys era como un fantasma, según sus confesiones. Entre 2001 y 2012, mató al menos a 11 personas. Sin embargo, se cree que el número real es mucho mayor. Su primer ataque planeado lo llevó a cabo en 1998, cuando aún estaba en el ejército, en Oregón. Secuestró a una joven en un sendero. La violó. Pero luego, en un momento de debilidad que no entendió, la dejó marchar. Keys describiría más tarde ese momento como arrepentimiento. Ese día juró que nunca más dejaría a nadie sin terminar el trabajo, y cumplió su palabra en fecha a 9 de junio de 2011, el lugar en Essex, Vermont. Bill y Lorraine Currier pasaban una tranquila velada en su casa. Lo que no sabían era que Israel Keys había salido de su casa en Alaska, había volado a Chicago, había conducido 16 horas hasta su pueblo y había recogido un kit para cometer asesinatos que había enterrado por el camino. Keys eligió la casa de la pareja al azar. Sus criterios eran sencillos: en una casa con garaje adosado, sin coches aparcados en la entrada y sin niños ni perros. Primero cortó la línea telefónica. Esperó unas horas. Luego entró en la casa por el garage, corrió hacia los dormitorios y ató a la pareja, que no entendía lo que estaba pasando. Los llevó en su propio coche a una granja abandonada a kilómetros de distancia. Allí violó repetidamente a Lorraine. Mató a Bill, que intentó escapar. Y luego estranguló a Lorraine. Dejó los cadáveres en el sótano y volvió a su vida normal en Alaska. Los cadáveres de la pareja nunca se encontraron, ya que la granja fue demolida posteriormente. En Keys funcionó durante años con este plan perfecto. No dejó ningún rastro. Hasta que el 1 de febrero de 2012, en Alaska, muy cerca de su propia casa, cometió un error crítico. Su víctima fue Samantha Koenig, de 18 años. A pesar de que las cámaras de seguridad estaban grabando, secuestró a esta joven que trabajaba en una cafetería a punta de pistola. La llevó a una cabaña cerca de su casa, mientras su familia dormía a solo unos metros de distancia. En su propia casa, violó a Samantha repetidamente y luego la estranguló hasta matarla. Pero la monstruosidad de Keys no terminó ahí y, inmediatamente después del asesinato, se embarcó en un viaje en barco de 2 semanas con su familia. Cuando regresó, descongeló el cadáver de Samantha con un calentador y luego comenzó un juego de rescate inimaginable para engañar a su familia. Maquilló el cadáver de Samantha para que sus ojos parecieran abiertos y diera la impresión de estar viva. Le cosió los párpados con hilo de pescar o cinta adhesive. Tomó esta espantosa fotografía y se la envió a su familia junto con una nota en la que exigía un rescate de $30,000. Este último asesinato, este último acto de arrogancia, fue su fin. Entonces, ¿cómo es posible que un asesino tan metódico y calculador cometiera errores tan amateur. ¿Cómo logró el FBI atrapar a este fantasma imposible de atrapar? Y en la sala de interrogatorios, que salió a la luz cuando cayó su máscara de sangre fría, en la próxima entrega de nuestra serie analizaremos la captura de Israel Keys y sus escalofriantes negociaciones con el FBI and sí. ¿Te interesa la psicología de este tipo de perfiles criminales misteriosos y metódico? Comparte con nosotros en los comentarios qué caso te gustaría que analizáramos más a fondo.
I mean, come on, let's face it. Yeah, what happened yesterday? Ooh, I'm a bad guy. I tried to escape, but let's be honest. Nobody really thought I was a good guy before that, so... It's not like being escaping suddenly makes me untrustworthy. I was kind of untrustworthy before that, so...
At least you have the perspective of, you know, have an unrealistic perspective.
Yeah, I'm not, and obviously, I think you probably especially know that I'm not going to get another opportunity like that, at least not within my lifetime. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell them. You know, all I can say is that, I mean, nothing's changed as far as my day-to-day, my reality. You know, it's still the same.
You still envision a way where we can get to meet both of our goals, where we can get what we want out of this.
I think so, but like I say, after yesterday, I had some frustrations of my own. So that was kind of the catalyst that, you know.
So what you're saying is there's a couple things you need cleared up from them.
I do, yeah, and I mean, and honestly, like we've talked about before, like all this other stuff, it's like little bargaining chips, whatever you want to call it, you know, that is all one thing, but you know, everybody knows what my bottom line concern is in all this, that I wanted this all wrapped up as quickly as possible. And like I said, I was in open court yesterday, and it's obviously not happening. So that's, you know, and I'm. It's not that, like I said, it's not that I'm pointing the finger or placing blame on anyone. I haven't even had an explanation of why things are the way they are. So how do I know whose fault it is, or if it's anyone's fault? I don't even know that. But that doesn't mean it didn't, you know, trying to. You know, because I remember all the interviews we've had. I remember what was said since day one, and my perspective hasn't changed on any of that. Yeah, granted, we've talked about a lot more things since then, but those are all things that I already had in my head before. Just because they're out on the table now, that doesn't change anything. That's what I wanted originally, what we talked about originally. So it's all still the same issue. Anyway, that's okay. All good.
So all that being said, where can we go from here?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know that we can go anywhere until I get some straight answers on, you know, what I was just talking about. Because really, that has been my bottom line all along, and you know, I won't be a bit surprised. I think I know what's going on, but I need confirmation before I decide to take the next step or steps, whatever it takes to.
And I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but I mean, it's very possible that it's something, whatever your questions are, that they may not be able to answer them for them.
Right, for other reasons. Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, I know there's, regardless of how unusual this situation is, that doesn't mean we can make it even more unusual. I mean, I know they still have guidelines and rules and they have to follow them. You know, I'm not expecting all the answers.
Nobody wants to cross the line that we've been told by a judge can't be crossed. And
right.
They can't do that. Nobody can. And so.
Yeah. No. I know.
I mean, all I can tell you is you're going to have to use your judgment on the information that you're getting and see if you can
No,
from it.
that's what I'm trying to do, but it's not an easy thing when you get everything through a middleman, as it were. So, like I say, I don't know who to put the blame on right now. I'm pretty sure I know, but I was trying really hard to work with everybody on this, keep everybody happy, but as we all know, that doesn't always happen. So, and I don't want this to turn into any more. My whole concern in all of this, and I know it's going to happen. If I have to do it, I will. But if I have to take the next step and just freaking, it's going to turn into even more of a breathing circus and more.
Because nobody wants.
Right, and nobody wants that, and I don't think they want that. So that's why I thought it was in everyone's best interest that that we could all have all parties involved. But once again, sit down and have a meeting, just like in the beginning. Like when there was no question about the legality or whether this was proper or improper. You know what? There was nothing weird or unusual about that. It was a standard interview, and there was no objections or court orders or paperwork or petitions. All this stuff that's happened since then, it seems like it's done nothing. It hasn't changed anything. I still come over here and talk to you about stuff. It hasn't changed any of that. It hasn't changed my bottom line at all. All it's done is made everything more complicated for everyone else involved. And at the bottom of that, I don't get a straight answer on anything. Well, I mean, maybe I have been. I hope I have been, at least on a few things, but definitely not on everything. Because I'm not there. I don't know. I don't see all the emails. I don't see all the paperwork. I don't hear what's said. And it's not even that I want to hear or know all that stuff, but I at least like to hear and know about the stuff that pertains to me and what my interest in it is. So.
I think one of their concerns, and I think we all share it, is that yesterday's actions, regardless of why you took them, are just going to create new hurdles for them. From the standpoint of, literally they had something, I really think it was just about agreed to. It may have even been agreed to, and I just don't know it. But like I said, we saw a draft version of the letter that had, I think, everything that we discussed or wanted. So they had achieved that, and then that statement yesterday has now endangered that. In addition, I think they're concerned now that maybe you have a different agenda than what you told us because you were very specific. I don't want any media attention. This has created a bit of a frenzy. I gotta believe that your next court appearance is going to be standing.
There's going to be lonely.
There's probably going to be a lot of vigilantes guarding the door on that one.
I'm afraid there's going to be, there was only a couple meet and greet people there yesterday. I'm afraid tomorrow is going to have some.
En esta sección, Keys habla de su intento de fuga del día anterior. Lo que pasó ayer fue un mal tipo que intentó escapar. No aborda este suceso como algo vergonzoso, sino casi como una broma. Seamos sinceros, nadie pensaba que yo fuera un buen tipo antes de esto. Esto muestra su estructura narcisista y lo desconectado que está de la realidad. También indica que su objetivo final, bottom line, es que todo termine lo antes posible, es decir, que lo ejecute en
one of my main concerns right now is trying to get a handle on what the process is going to be. If this goes to CCU, they approve one or all my cases for the death penalty. It comes back, and then my understanding at this point is it goes to a judge, and they decide and make a decision as to whether or not to pursue it from there.
Again, like I said, I can't give you legal advice, but here's my understanding of the process. In terms of the notice itself, it gets filed, with the court.
Right.
After it gets filed with the court, then, obviously you're free to plead guilty in your main case or a trial or the Curry case, whatever you want. And then, let's assume we're talking about the Currier case, there would be a sentencing set. And at the sentencing, I think there would be, either, like I said, there's an option to both sides agree to do a judge sentencing or a jury sentencing. And then that would go to that. And then ultimately, the jury or the judge is the one who would have to impose the death penalty.
Right.
Or life in prison.
Okay, so it goes to the judge or the jury to sentence either one. At the sentencing, it's a public hearing.
Yes.
Either way, it has to be a public hearing.
I think, yeah, I mean, most of it, now there's exceptions for public hearings where we conceal parts of them. And part of the methods we've used to kind of close portions of sentencings in the past is to apprise the court of cooperation efforts on behalf of the defendant. If we've got a legitimate law enforcement basis to close the public out, we can do that. Now, in order to do that, we have to, get approval from main justice. But, it's happened in the past. It's happened virtually in every case that I've had cooperators. And usually, they don't want their cooperation known because it can endanger them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my concern is, like I said from the beginning, there's certain aspects of the things that I've done that I would prefer never became public. And from what I've been hearing lately, at something as serious as a death penalty hearing, they want to review all of the evidence before they make a decision.
You say they, you mean jury. Okay.
Jury. And obviously, in everything we've discussed, there's a lot of that. I mean, if they're going to review all the evidence, then that's primarily going to be interviews that we've done, in which that information is going to be in that evidence. And so if it's a public hearing, it's going to be, all that's going to become public, and that's exactly what I didn't want from the beginning. Certain aspects of this that, there's no way around it, but, as far as different things that were done with the bodies and the sexual assault stuff, that type of stuff, I don't see, if that has to be part of the hearing, then we got to figure out something different.
I got sort of two possible solutions I've been thinking about to get to that one. One with respect to stuff that you're working with us on, like other crimes, other bodies, and they're still investigating to corroborate your confessions, those murders. We can certainly seek approval to close that part of the sentencing. To the extent you're talking about those. All right, now, I don't know whether or not no guarantees, whether or not main justice would grant that. The second portion of it is, we control the evidence that we present. So the government's got to present the evidence. And, maybe there's some way to kind of address both of our concerns here by circumscribing, by limiting the amount of stuff that's introduced into the court. Okay. So I'm toying with that idea. Now, obviously, there's a catch-22 to that, right?
Right.
The worse things, appear to the jury or the judge, the more likely it is you're going to get what you want.
Right.
In the context of the Currier case. Right? Yes. But I think that there is maybe a way around that. But in order to kind of get around that, what we have to do is we have to have at least the basic information on all the murders you could commit. So basically, it's not like, hey, we're sort of going with quantity rather than quality of the murders. And if we can corroborate those, I think there may be a way to kind of get you what you want, but also, obviously we get what we want then too. That would have to be part of the negotiation.
Este es uno de los momentos psicológicos más importantes del interrogatorio. Keys se da cuenta del conflicto entre lo que quiere la pena de muerte y lo que quiere ocultar los horribles detalles de los asesinatos. Le preocupa que se haga un juicio público y, en particular, que se revelen al público detalles como lo que se hizo con los cadáveres y la agresión sexual. N, o quiere esto, para su IG, él mismo lo denomina Catch 22. Artículo 22 dilema. Sin solución N. Lo resume así. Cuanto más malos parezcan los hechos ante el jurado, más probable es que consigas lo que quieres, la pena de muerte.
I remember specifically before we even had, before I gave you the location of that house or anything, I was like, I'll give you the location of this house, but I don't want the locals involved. I don't want... I didn't see any reason to bring anyone back there in that area into the fold, so to speak, as to what was going on, because they didn't have any clue anyway. And next thing I know, there's like articles in the paper, like this big dig site going on. There was a lot more discreet ways to handle it. So you got your information, they went right away to the lead investigator on the case, and my name got leaked out somehow way back then, and then months later you never find anything aside from what I gave you in the first place, and then my name's attached to it anyway.
Let me tell you a little bit about at least my perception of the work there, and I'll tell you a little bit about the reality of law enforcement. The FBI just kind of went in there and simply said, like gangbusters, hey, locals, you stay out of it, we're handling it, we're not telling you what's going on. That would be a political nightmare for them, okay? Given that they had the information and another agency was investigating. They couldn't do it. And I think we've talked about that numerous times since then, that Vermont was a test case. And, I think we've learned a lot from Vermont. And we understood that the way that was handled back then, we'd have to avoid in the future to keep both sides happy if we were going to get continued information. That's the whole reason that we initially came up with, this letter, is to handle it a little bit differently and get Vermont to sort of get on board with us. So, we're successful in getting the letter. Obviously, some things happened that, we were disappointed with, too, about the name getting leaked out.
Yeah, we're not happy about the way that was handled either.
In fact, there was a rift between us and Vermont for a while, and we weren't giving them information because of the fact that we heard that it got leaked. And so we were, angry at them. We had like a video conference session with all the investigators from Vermont and all the prosecutors from Vermont and us, and kind of hashed things out. And said, obviously there's been some problems. They agreed that, look, they're on board with us. They've obviously got to consider the needs of the family, but I think we hashed things out, and things have worked much better, especially like recently. Being able to control that press conference on the couriers in light of the possible settlement of other crimes, I think was a pretty remarkable feat that we were able to accomplish. But what I'm trying to do here is, all right, obviously we can go with this. That was the way they they even said in this initial letter that they would defer to us as to what charging would happen. And that was a way to kind of put the lid on things and kind of keep going quietly. All right, I understand you can go with this. So, what we're trying to do now is just simply revisit that another way. Obviously, that opportunity's passed us by, but there's still this opportunity on the table. And, I think the longer we wait on it, the more problematic it becomes, because I've been avoiding calling Vermont since, this week. I've just basically said, hey, he's obviously getting some advice on the letter. And I haven't heard from them since Monday, Tuesday, and I haven't called them because I know the next question is going to be, all right, where are we on the letter, because we have to do something. So, this letter is an effort to try to keep everybody in line, keep Vermont in line, get you, to some extent, what you want, and get us what we want.
It doesn't give me anything I want. It doesn't give me anything that I'm not going to get anyway. You just said Vermont is chomping at the bit now. They want to see me indicted for this.
In their jurisdiction.
Whatever. I mean, the whole deal originally was that I would be charged federally with it, and now you're ready to just hand it over to them and let them charge me. So I don't care. If they want to charge me, it's pretty clear at this point I'm not going to get what I want, at least not, I'm not going to get a straight answer on what I want, and apparently I misunderstood the way the whole process works from the beginning, so all the information that I've given you now is probably going to get out anyway, so whatever.
La ira de Keys alcanza aquí su punto álgido. Desde el principio, solo tenía una condición en el control de los medios de comunicación. Está muy enfadado, porque se ha filtrado a la prensa el asesinato de la pareja Courier en Vermont. Mi primera petición fue: no quiero a la gente local. La policía, dice, y añade. Y de repente, veo que ha salido en el periódico. Keys, que considera todo el interrogatorio como un acuerdo comercial, afirma que, tras esta filtración, la nueva carta, presentada por el FBI, no me da nada de lo que quiero, y parece que ha malinterpretado todo el proceso. Para él, esto supone una pérdida de control.
You've already said whether I'm charged with this federally or locally in Vermont, I'm going to be charged with it soon, right?
That's their plan.
That's what they want.
That's what they want, and that's what we're trying to kind of avoid, at least, because you said you didn't want to get dragged back to Vermont.
So I don't see how they can do that anyway when I'm still facing charges here.
They'll drag you back eventually. I mean, what they do is, and what's happened in other cases, is they lodge the detainer, you finish up here, and then you go to Vermont, maybe then they lend you out to the state court there, and that goes through the process, which is what you said you didn't want. And that's where we're headed.
And the other thing is, and I know you know this, is that the way typical law enforcement investigation would work on this, you have to admit that the way this, I know this seems slow to you, that this process has taken a long time, but for us and the people that are in charge of us, what they want, they know that there's potentially up to 10 or 11 victims. So there's 7 or 8 that we don't know where they're at and those kind of things. So what we're getting the pressure to do is find those other people. And so what you don't want us to do is to use conventional police methods to do it. And
you're already using conventional.
We're not. We haven't gone to
media.
But we haven't gone to local media places and said, Israel Keys was here on April 10th of 2009. He committed this Tupper Lake bank robbery. He killed somebody in this area, and they're buried here, and we need the public's help in finding out if they saw him or his vehicle, and this is the vehicle, and this is the license plate number. That's what a typical police investigation would do. We know you don't want that, because the first one of those that we put out gets on.
You don't want that either.
You're right. You're right. We don't, because we want this cooperation that we have, and that's why we've been delaying this. But the pressure is getting increasingly with Vermont. We're getting calls from Vermont also, since they ran their story. The colonel of the state police there is getting calls from other families in that area who now think Israel Keys could have killed their family members because he killed somebody else there. And so that's what we're looking. That's what's going to happen in every state if we use conventional police methods. And we want to keep it as quiet as you do, because we want the information from you, because we know it would be the most accurate. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, I know you know that.
No, I know. But you know as well as I do that you put my name and face out there and dates out there all you want. But we're talking about stuff that's happened at least 2 years ago now.
I know, I realize that. But that's the only other way we can do it, right?
I don't know. But I'm just saying that I'm getting a little bit ticked off at what's happening with the information that I've already given you know, and I see no reason at this point to keep giving me more information because I don't know what's going to happen with that. Once you have it, once they have it, these different jurisdictions, it's their information. Yeah, I understand that, but then I lose it. And you guys, and then, Vermont, New York, whoever, they do whatever they want with it. And like I say, the whole process is, I'm getting a little bored with it. So,
I mean, you're annoyed with that one, the way I was saying. Quite frankly, I'm annoyed with you because you had it in your power to stop it right here. And I came up with this plan, and you could have done it. And if you did it, we wouldn't have had the problem in Vermont last week because we wouldn't have the authority to say
they had already leaked my name to the press.
But I mean, they had
time
nothing
that
else.
letter was out.
They had nothing else. And, they leaked it, but they had absolutely zero until they had the corroboration of the press conference, which, by virtue of this letter, we would have had more sway in telling him, no, you can't do that because he's cooperating. Here's what he's already done, and he's lived up to his end of the bargain. So that's the reality of the situation. You blame us for the situation. I'm blaming you.
I do blame you. I told you from the get-go, before I told you where the freaking bodies were left, I told you that I didn't want the locals involved. And the first thing you do is make a big scene and do a big freaking archaeological dig right alongside the main road.
You've agreed in the past, if we're being honest here, that we've handled that situation as quietly as possible. And to whatever extent we could, we shut people's mouths, and the only problem was probably one cop that didn't get the message early on. And that was because...
No, I think you need to back up to your recordings. Because I remember the conversation, and I said I didn't want the locals involved in it. And I know now I talked to the guy. I talked to the lead investigator. Not only did you involve him in that, but you took him to New York to dig up the guns. You had him involved from the very get-go.
Well, the only reason that guy was involved in the conversation is we were sort of planning a double fist at the time, if you remember. Okay, that was sort of by...
Los investigadores utilizan el punto débil de Keys, los medios de comunicación y su familia en su contra. Le hacen una amenaza velada al explicarle cómo no llevaron a cabo la investigación policial típica. No fuimos a los medios de comunicación locales a decir que Israel Keys estuvo aquí el 9 de abril. Le dicen que recibieron presiones de las familias de otras víctimas. Keys se da cuenta del engaño y dice: ya estoy empezando a enfadarme por la información que te he dado. Sabe que si da información, perderá el control.
So I think that...
You
Anything
said
about
trip
this?
down memory lane.
Yeah,
it was.
Okay, anything?
I didn't even realize I still had anything in there. I'm
Yeah,
guessing all
sure.
that stuff was in the garage or something? Or?
It was spread out. I think the box was in the garage. I don't remember where some of the other, some of the other specific stuff, but I know the box, pretty sure the box was in the garage. And I think something of this, pictures I had this stuff laid out to show you.
Yeah.
I think we maybe even showed you these before. I don't know
No, I
if we did
saw
or
the
not.
ones that were done.
Okay, yeah, these
Was that
were,
as they found it?
yeah. They might have pulled something away.
Just so you could see about where it was.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I thought it kind of camouflaged.
Yeah, that was sort of like walking up on it. You can see it. We got a report. We just got all this stuff, sent it into the lab. So we do everything that we get. And on the tray that holds the ammo in there, there's a perfect right thumbprint.
Yeah, right.
No, there is. I don't have the lab report back.
Wow. Uh-oh.
More CSI stuff.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Well, I'm disappointed in myself mostly, but I'm glad.
The lab examiner called me. I don't have the report yet. When I get the report, I'll show you the report. But I'm not being silly. It was on one of these two on the plastic tray inside.
Huh.
like these pieces must be for plastic, like a bottom view of
Yeah.
the top view of it.
Okay.
Slides into that cardboard sleeve.
Well, it was kind of in a hurry, I guess. So too lazy to even dig a hole for that one. Just piled rocks on top of it.
Are you planning on going back for that?
Yeah, this summer. That would have been a good trip. I still can't get over the disappeared house in Vermont thing.
You have big plans for this summer back there?
Well, I'm going to go back there. I just picture driving up, looking everywhere for that farmhouse and not being able to find it.
To burn it down?
Yeah, that would have been funny. But whatever, you guys did that for me.
Speaking of Vermont,
Yeah, speaking of Vermont, we were talking to Vermont on Monday. And they want to know what's going on. And they are interested in filing charges as they have been all along.
What,
So,
federal?
well, you know,
You don't know?
no, I mean, we talked to both the state and federal prosecutors on Monday. And we want to know what we should tell them from your perspective.
Well, it's a little hard to talk about my general overall perspective right now for obvious reasons. So.
Well, just tell us your perspective. I understand that, and we're not going to do that, but we are interested in your perspective on the courier murders, because that's what they're interested in, right? And
they're also interested in your cooperation on other crimes and where that stands, and whether you intend to follow through on some of that. Because that's the kind of thing that they're looking for from us.
Well, like I've said all along, my cooperation on other crimes is dependent on what's going on with crimes that I'm already charged with. And I said that all along. As far as interesting legal process of issues.
well, you know, and we've talked about this quite a bit, that Vermont is willing to be patient if they think that there's forward momentum on solving other crimes. I know that you don't care about that from the perspective of families or other victims, but Vermont does. And so there's a way to meet in the middle by giving something that they can then have. They don't need to know the details of it, but they need to know these documents so that they can continue to hold on.
I just don't understand why, even from a legal perspective, I don't understand what the hurry is or what their issue is as to why they want to file additional charges, when I'm clearly already charged with substantial ones.
Well, in Vermont, you've got state prosecutors who right now have an unsolved, according to the public, unsolved murder of the courier. Right? So the law enforcement is under a lot of pressure.
They get calls from the press that they're telling us every week, until different state prosecutors are elected, so they probably feel more of an obligation to inform the public than people are totally left on prosecutors.
Right. But since they called off the search for the bodies, as far as the public knows, they can't even definitively say that it was a homicide. I know they already told everybody it was.
They know that, Vermont knows that.
Yeah, right.
So Vermont, as you let's just be a really realistic approach to it. You're a state prosecutor in Vermont. You want to come out and say, hey, here are the charges we've got. We've got the guy, he's gone. That's what you want to do.
Right.
So you need to give them a reason to say, don't do that.
If you don't want me to do that, I mean, that's the...
Aquí se tambalea la arrogancia de Kiss y su confianza en su plan. Dice que todavía no puede creer que la granja de Vermont, donde dejó los cadáveres, haya desaparecido. Imaginar que conduje hasta allí, que busqué la granja y no la encontré. Me vuelve loco. Este es un momento excepcional, en el que su plan perfecto se ve frustrado por la naturaleza. Finalmente, hace la confesión más importante de todo el interrogatorio. Pensaba que había formas de manipular la situación, y evidentemente, en los últimos meses me he dado cuenta de que no podía hacerlo. Ahora comprende que no puede controlar el sistema desde dentro. Las transcripciones de los interrogatorios de Israel Kiss son escalofriantes, no solo por las atrocidades que relata, sino también por la forma en que las relata. Estas transcripciones ofrecen un mapa oscuro e invaluable de cómo funciona su mente. Ahora, analicemos este mapa paso a paso a la primera y más llamativa observación en superioridad narcisista y desconexión emocional. Al escuchar a Kiss, se ve que no muestra ninguna reacción emocional cuando habla de los asesinatos o del sufrimiento de las víctimas, sino cuando hay un contratiempo en el plan o en el acuerdo con el FBI, ira, decepción. Todo ello dirigido al plan, no a las personas. El hecho de que se refiera a su propio intento de fuga en tercera persona, diciendo, era un hombre malo que intentaba escapar, y luego se ría, demuestra que no se ve a sí mismo en el centro de la situación, sino como un observador externo, un jugador inteligente de este juego. En segundo, necesidad obsesiva de control. Toda la vida de Kiss, desde los manuales de asesinato hasta la elección aleatoria de víctimas, se basaba en el control absoluto. La sala de interrogatorios fue el primer lugar en el que perdió el control en su vida. Por eso, dedica toda su energía a recuperar ese control perdido. No negocia su libertad, sino el control de los medios de comunicación, el curso del juicio e incluso las condiciones de su propia muerte. Lo que realmente le enfurece no es haber sido capturado, sino que se haya roto el acuerdo que había hecho, como en el caso de la filtración de Vermont en tercero mente dividida, se compartimentación. Kiss es uno de los ejemplos más extremos del mecanismo de defensa conocido en psicología como compartimentación. Separa perfectamente su identidad de padre que piensa en su hija, de su identidad de asesino que comete agresiones sexuales. El famoso Catch 22, dilema sin solución al que se refiere en el interrogatorio, no es un momento de arrepentimiento, es el intento de la identidad de padre de limpiar la suciedad creada por la identidad de asesino. Kiss no intenta proteger a su hija de él mismo y de la carga moral de sus actos, sino solo de esta terrible información, en cuarto, en racionalización y acuerdo de trabajo. Para Kiss, esta sala de interrogatorios no es un lugar de ajuste de cuentas moral o de confesión, es una mesa de acuerdo de trabajo, logístico. Sabe que tiene en sus manos una información muy valiosa para el FBI, es decir, la ubicación de los demás cadáveres, y la utiliza como moneda de cambio para conseguir el resultado final que desea, es decir, una ejecución rápida y en secreto. Constantemente pregunta, ¿qué gano yo con esto? Convirtiendo todo el proceso en un negocio. Por último, una arrogancia e inteligencia. Su sorpresa ante la demolición y desaparición de la granja de Vermont, donde dejó los cadáveres, revela su arrogancia narcisista hacia su plan y hacia sí mismo. No calculó que el mundo podría cambiar después de que él se diera la vuelta. Sin embargo, el hecho de que se diera cuenta del dilema de Catch 22 y, finalmente, comprendiera que no podía manipular el sistema, demuestra que no solo era un asesino, sino también un sociópata capaz de comprender el sistema, estratégico y con una gran inteligencia. ¿Qué opinas de las tácticas de interrogatorio de Israel Keys? El hecho de que un asesino intente dictar sus propias condiciones al revelar la ubicación de sus víctimas es una laguna del sistema judicial moderno o una parte inevitable del mismo. Esperamos tus comentarios. Israel Keys, el asesino fantasma más planificado y metódico de Estados Unidos, llevó una doble vida perfecta durante años, con los kits de asesinato que enterró por todo el país y sus víctimas elegidas al azar. Se convirtió en un perfil imposible de atrapar, hasta que, en Alaska, cerca de su propia casa, violó sus reglas más básicas, el secuestro de Samantha Cornick, el 1 de febrero de 2012. Fue el comienzo de su fin. Keys hizo algo que normalmente nunca habría hecho. Eligió a su víctima cerca de su casa y cometió un error aún mayor. Utilizó la tarjeta bancaria de su víctima. En este único error, derribó el muro de anonimato que Keys había construido meticulosamente. El rastro de la tarjeta lo llevó hasta Texas. El 3 de marzo, cuando lo detuvieron por conducir a exceso de velocidad al volante de un Ford Focus blanco alquilado en Texas. El juego había terminado. Cuando la policía registró el coche, encontró la identificación de Samantha Cornick, su teléfono móvil y la crucial tarjeta bancaria. El fantasma había sido capturado en la sala de interrogatorios. No era un lugar de arrepentimiento para Israel Keys, sino una nueva mesa de negociaciones. Como hemos analizado en capítulos anteriores, Keys tenía un único objetivo: en mantener el control. Le presentó dos condiciones claras al FBI para hablar. La primera, y la más importante para él, era que los delitos que había cometido para proteger a su hija no aparecieran en los medios de comunicación y que su nombre permaneciera totalmente anónimo. La segunda era que quería la pena de muerte inmediata. El FBI aceptó estas condiciones con la esperanza de poder averiguar el paradero de la pareja Courier de Vermont y de otras víctimas desaparecidas. A cambio de este acuerdo, Keith, con una frialdad glacial, incluso sonriendo en ocasiones durante el interrogatorio, comenzó a relatar uno por uno sus asesinatos. Confesó haber cometido 4 asesinatos en el estado de Washington y otro en la costa este, además de atracos a bancos e incendios provocados. Sin embargo, el proceso de interrogatorio tomó un rumbo que Keys no había previsto. El acuerdo se rompió. Los detalles de los asesinatos de Vermont se filtraron a la prensa. Keys se enfrentó en la sala de interrogatorios a lo que él denominó Catch 22, un dilema sin solución. Para conseguir la pena de muerte que deseaba, tendría que contar todos los horribles detalles ante el tribunal. Esto destrozaría lo único que intentaba proteger, a la imagen de padre que su hija tenía de él. Israel Keys siempre había mantenido el control a lo largo de su vida. Había controlado a sus víctimas, sus métodos de asesinato, la ignorancia de la policía y su doble vida. Pero ahora se daba cuenta de que el sistema le había quitado el control y se había convertido en un peón. No permitiría que el tribunal, el jurado o los medios de comunicación le pusieran fin. Terminaría el juego según sus propias reglas. Israel Keys no esperó a ser juzgado. El 2 de diciembre de 2012, fue encontrado muerto en su celda de la prisión de Alaska. Se había quitado la vida cortándose las venas con una navaja. Dejó una nota de suicidio de 4 páginas llena de elogios poéticos al asesinato. Sin embargo, su verdadera confesión estaba en 12 páginas de papel escondidas debajo de su cama. En esos papeles había 11 calaveras y un pentagrama satánico, dibujados con su propia sangre. A los investigadores creen que estas 11 calaveras representan el número de personas que Keys confesó haber asesinado. Una última y silenciosa confesión. Israel Keys, a pesar de todas sus frías negociaciones, se llevó consigo a la tumba la mayoría de sus secretos. Hoy en día, la única víctima cuyo cadáver fue encontrado y entregado a su familia es Samantha Cornick. Para las familias de las demás víctimas, nunca se ha hecho justicia del todo. El FBI sigue abierto el caso para encontrar a las víctimas restantes de Israel Keys y poder dar una identidad a esas tumbas anónimas. El suicidio de Israel Keys fue su último acto de control o una cobarde huida de la justicia. Comparta sus opiniones con nosotros en la sección de comentarios.